All right, so Jennifer, this has been absolutely fantastic. Very, very informative. We're coming into the top of the hour here. So if you don't mind, I want to hit you with a few rapid fire questions just to get a sense of what your experience has been like with a little spontaneity here. So let's talk about your biggest win. What's the biggest win you've had?
Biggest win? Well, I'm a lender, so I just want to get paid back.
So that's always a win, you get paid back, right? That's always.
Reporting from Washington, D.C.'s Rip and Flip Studios, it's the Rip and Flip Podcast with Al Blocker.
Hey folks, it's your host Al Blocker, Black, for another episode of Rip and Flip. This is actually episode 52, and this is the podcast where we talk about real estate, we talk about reinvention, and the mindset it takes to build something from scratch. Today's guest is someone who I respect tremendously. Jennifer Billings is the owner, the principal of Blackline Lending. Let me start. Jennifer is a 20-year investor. She's a private lender and one of the most hands-on partners you can find in the business. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for the invitation.
It's all my pleasure, Jennifer. I know we've been having conversations leading up to your appearance. I'm glad you're finally here. Thank you so much. So, Jennifer, here's where I want to start. I want to talk about sort of the origin of your story. So let's start, if we can, at the beginning, because your path in lending isn't what I would call a typical one. So, question number one, and I'm sure my listeners want to know this, and viewers, what originally pulled you into real estate, and how did that evolve into your practice as it is today?
Sure. Well, I would give all the thanks and credit to my father for teaching me this business. He was a flipper himself. He loved real estate. He held real estate, owned real estate, and he was also a lender himself. He kind of, as many people do, evolved through different types of investing in real estate. Even at a young age, he was someone who loved to keep busy. So I would always be riding off with him to his projects, and you didn't have GPS in those days. So we had like a MapQuest map, and we were looking at comps and going to Home Depot and things like that. So he taught me everything. I have a background in banking and finance. So okay. I have worked in the corporate world for financial institutions, for investment institutions, some of it dealing with real estate, some of it not real estate. But I always really enjoyed real estate as an investment, really because it was something I was doing with my dad. And so over time, I started investing, sometimes even loaning and working on projects with him or loaning money to other people. And we started doing the business together. And, over time, it was a great investment tool. It was building passive income. And I decided to turn it into a real business because there's a great business model there. And so over time, I developed it into an actual business versus just being an investment vehicle on the side.
Fantastic. Thanks for that background. So when you launched Blackline, was there a gap in the market that you were trying to fill in particular?
I think that there was a gap. There still is a gap, and I would expect it continues that way, that there are certain investors looking at, certain types of deals, the types of deals that you look at, that we look at, that right. You need a fast answer. Somebody who is selling a distressed property, an ugly house, they need to sell that fast. They need to sell it to a very specialized person who can repair it, fix it up, turn it back around. Those types of deals.
That would be me.
Yeah.
That would be me.
Exactly.
Let's go.
And you don't, and you know how it is. You need to make a fast decision. You need to promise that you can settle the deal in a week or two. You need to be able to meet all those hurdles. You can't go to a big institution or to a bank. They can't make a decision. They can't fund a deal that quickly. So there is a gap in the market for all different kinds of investors, people that are bankable, normally bankable, people that are maybe a little bit less than bankable, but that right. need this kind of money to be able to take advantage of opportunities, because not everybody has, that $50,000 or $100,000 in their pocket to get to settlement in 1 week. I think that gap will always exist. And, so the product that I offer is really a sort of a gap product in the sense that it's a bridge. It's a bridge to somewhere, a bridge to wealth, I guess, a bridge to an exit, either of getting a different type of loan and refinancing later or selling it. But it's sort of a gap type of loan in that sense.
Yeah, I don't want you to divulge too much. That's sexy talk right there. And I do want to get into that a little bit later on. I've got an area carved out for that. So let me ask you, Jennifer, you've been doing this now for over 15 years, right? What's the biggest shift, if any, you've seen in the Maryland market? Because I know that you are pretty exclusive to your dealings in business in Maryland. Has there been a shift that has been substantial that you've noticed?
Well, I would say the good news is that the technology behind flipping is It has not changed that much. Buying a house, repairing it, selling it, holding it as a rental, that technology has not changed from 20 to 25 years ago, to age myself, to now. And I think I will continue to be that way. But what has changed a lot are the financing landscape. So for me, looking back 20 years, it was individuals like my dad or a doctor or a lawyer, dentist, somebody like that, a professional with some money, interested in real estate, was willing to kind of fund privately these types of investments. So it was a very kind of private type of business. You had to sort of meet people through meetup clubs or word of mouth. And then at some point, maybe a decade ago, I don't know when the exact point was, others out there in the financial universe started to notice that this is a great asset class. You've got borrowers that are residential real estate is a great asset class to be invested in. These loans tend to be a little bit higher yielding. So just became obvious to some other institutions that lending this sort of hard money secured by residential real estate was a great asset class. So money started flowing in, not just to Maryland, but everywhere. And so now you have these kind of national providers. So now you have this kind of quasi-institutional, they're not really banks, but they're lending institutions that call themselves hard money. And then I guess a person like me is now called private money. I used to always tell people I was a hard money lender because, it's hard money because it's secured by an asset, but now we say private money. So it's changed a lot, but it's great, Al. I mean, now you might think, well, that's a lot of competition for you. Aren't there people that are undercutting your rates? But, I don't look at it that way. I think that there's a lot of capital in the space. This gives a lot of, investors and borrowers many different opportunities to put projects to work. It's great for me because people can buy rentals and buy and hold, and they can refinance using these other institutions. So it's opened up kind of a whole new universe of borrowers. And I think it's great. It's great to see the capital flowing into this area. And I don't really put myself as a direct competitor to some of those national types of hard money lenders anyways, because they're still somewhat institutional in their approach. And, at the end of the day, my borrowers like to work with me and like to work with me personally. And the type of process and the ease of working with me is something completely different than what they might have from those other providers. But overall, it's been a fantastic development for flippers for this kind of real estate investing.
That's a good segue. One thing that stands out, I know you and I talked a little bit before the show here. One thing that stands out about Blackline is that you co-invest in every deal. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, I'm a balance sheet lender, as they would say. So I'm investing my own balance sheet that I have full control over. It's mostly my money. I have some other investors and friends and family money that I'm investing as well. But the majority of it is my own balance sheet. And so when a borrower comes to me and proposes a deal, I'm able to make a quick decision. I can be creative. I don't have to meet a certain list of underwriting standards. Of course, I have my own internal standards of the types of deals I want to do, but I don't have to go and find the money later. So there's quite a few lenders in the space that they see a deal, they think it sounds good, and then they say, yeah, I'll do it. But in the back of their mind, they know they've got to go find that money. They've got to go get it from someone else, or they've got to basically take down that loan and then assign it or sell it to one of those institutions. And if you're doing that, then you really have to abide by somebody else's rules. That's the difference. And I think it's a real benefit because also then at the end of the day, my interests are 100% aligned with my borrower. And so I am just highly motivated to make sure that they get their construction draws fast, that their project is going, that I'm doing everything I can to facilitate their project being a success. And so we are perfectly aligned, and then we work extremely well together that way. And I'm not saying that the other lenders that are finding money are not, they're not just funding a bad loan. So I'm not accusing anybody of that if they're kind of brokering a deal, but it just kind of enhances the relationship that we have and the care that I give and the attention I'm able to give because I'm co-investing in that sense.
I do have to ask you this. Does co-investing change the relationship with your borrowers? Does that change the relationship at all?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I just think that you naturally, take the time to be more of a partner. So in the same way that they might have a contractor that they're working with and the contractor is going to get a piece of the deal, or they may be aligned with other types of partners. And so I view myself as the same for them. It's just being a partner to help get them through to the end. And our interests are aligned. I'm not taking a piece of their profit or anything like that. I'm coming at it as a traditional lender, just charging an interest rate, and some origination fees. But in the sense of our economic interests being aligned and my ability to be supportive of them is, I think a huge benefit to them because of the business model that I have.
Gotcha. So here's what I know for my viewers and listeners. Here's what I'm sure that the vast majority of people want to know. drum roll. In your eyes, what's the perfect borrower look like to you?
Well, for me, a perfect borrower is it all comes down to execution. So I think a perfect borrower is somebody who shows that they can deliver. For one thing, on timing and on speed. It's very important to me to see that they are going to get to work immediately, that they've got their crews and everything they need to do, their processes, the thought about how they order the work and the permits and everything else that needs to go into it,
Right.
that they have that all completely nailed down and that they're able to get to work quickly. Because anytime I make a loan and anytime they buy, an investor buys a project, it's based on assumptions. Your assumptions are kind of only as good as what we are in day one. And so the faster that, everything can get completed and get back to market, either for a refinance or for sale, the closer we are to whatever those expectations were when we underwrote the project and when we kind of penciled out what we thought the profit would be. So time is money. Having speed and being able to deliver quickly is super important. And so, my favorite borrowers, my best borrowers are the ones that really can start working right away and working fast. And I think also the borrowers that really make a top end product. So, they're making a product that we know that at the end of the day, no matter what the market is, they are delivering the best product for value, for money at that price point. And if you're doing that, you're going to constantly deliver. You're going to sell it. It's going to work out. So
I would agree.
to have that kind of product that's resilient to market things that we can't control. So that for me is the best borrower.
Good stuff.
Really is the capacity to deliver and the execution.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this, and I'm going to transition to something else here. So what's the one thing borrowers think lenders care about that really doesn't matter? Is there anything that comes to mind or top of mind?
Well, I guess what I find is that sometimes borrowers want to downplay or sort of come to it and sort of say that, well, the rehab budget is lower than it really is going to be or something like that. They think that lenders get nervous about, what is the budget, what is the project, and they want to make it seem like it's a lot simpler than it is.
Right.
And they kind of say, oh, this is just a simple thing. This is going to be just cosmetic or something. And that I don't think is really helpful to anybody because, they probably know in their mind what it really is. And they think that I'm going to be more receptive to something, but I'm just actually more receptive to the truth. I'm not afraid of a difficult project or a gut rehab necessarily. Yeah. Of course, we all love those projects that are fast and cosmetic only, but there's certain opportunities out there that take more work. So that's one thing that I sense that and they also like to kind of use ranges of ARV and kind of exaggerate a bit on the upside and then exaggerate on the downside of the renovation cost. So, but I don't think that anybody should be afraid of that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, even if the profit isn't, got six figures on it, if you're showing with conservative estimates and you've got room and cushion, a decent profit, then I think we're all happy with that. And if it comes out better, then that's great. The borrower gets all the upside. The buyer, the owner gets all of that upside. Of course, they should. We should underwrite these to the truth.
Yeah. I appreciate that response there, and be prepared for your phone to blow up after this interview. I think that a lot of people will be very receptive to that. So I want to shift gears really quick, Jennifer. Let's talk fix and flip, some real talk here. All right. When you evaluate a deal, right, what are the first red flags that tell you to walk away?
Well, I think that the red flags to me are, I guess the question is whether it's a red flag about the property itself or a red flag about the deal itself or the borrower. But I think the red flag to me is when somebody, I quite often get someone who comes to me and they say, purchase price is X, rehab cost is Y, ARV is Z, and then they just subtract that and they say their profit, and they haven't accounted for the carry costs of the other costs that you have, the financing costs, just all those soft costs. And they haven't accounted for transaction costs. It costs money to buy the property with all the title and settlement and to sell it. There's going to be selling costs. And so I get people that kind of come and they show me something and it sounds like they're going to have like an 80 or 100,000 profit. But then when you really look at it, it's kind of barely breaking even, and that's under their best assumption. So it's just a red flag to me when people are being a little bit too simplistic. And that's okay. It's okay to come to me and say, hey, I have a deal. These are the rough numbers. Let's put that together. I don't need super specific.
What's the deal? Has there been a deal that has surprised you, good or bad, that you've underwritten?
Well, I think that there's always nice surprises every now and then when somebody puts something under up for sale and it gets a contract immediately or, comes out, more than expected. But I would say more the surprise has been on the downside where every once in a while a house is just jinxed. It seems like it's going to be a great deal. Everybody's excited going into it. And then just one thing after another happens that just can't be anticipated. And then you get to sell it and you get a contract and then you lose the contract. And then you put it back up again and then you get another one and then you get an inspection problem or an appraisal that doesn't match. And it just seems sometimes there's just some of these things that seem jinxed and we just get to the point of like, let's just sell this and move on because
Right.
I don't know if you've seen that before, but every once in a while you get one of those and that's a negative surprise.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Jennifer, the market right now is, we're in some interesting times right now. And I'm curious to know what neighborhoods or asset types do you view as most bullish right now?
Yeah, well, I think that affordability continues to be a huge issue for either buyers or renters. And so I'm bullish really on the types of projects that are going to be in that sort of price point zone that is affordable, that is attractive for buyers. I think Baltimore metropolitan area is generally, somewhat more affordable when you start comparing to other areas. And so that's a huge benefit. And we do see still not enough inventory to maybe meet some of that demand of people that are looking from other markets for a really high quality house for less money they would spend in other types of areas, even if that means some commuting or something like that. So I think that affordability is an issue, particularly when we see mortgage rates moving all over the place and people are very sensitive to those monthly payments.
Right.
And so the types of properties that are really just going to be easy to understand in terms of the value, they're at that price point that makes sense. I'm less excited about houses where it's difficult to assess the value because they're outside of a neighborhood or they're on some sort of a strange road or in those kinds of markets that are much more frothy or bullish where those types of houses can actually, turn into a huge windfall profit for the borrower. In this case, I find those a little bit more difficult to underwrite, and I'm sort of cautious on. But, houses that really make that, are sort of within neighborhoods and in areas that are seen as attractive and are affordable, that's, I think, the key for right now that you'll do well with those investments, whether they're buy and holds and rentals or whether they're, flips.
They're fantastic. Is there a trend that investors should be preparing for over the next 12 months, in your estimation? You seeing anything out there?
Preparing for in the next 12 months?
Are there any trends that have emerged or are emerging that investors should brace themselves or prepare themselves for over the next 6 to 12 months or so?
Well, I think that particular to the Maryland, Baltimore market, there's still a bit of this overhang from this DSCR scandal that was really limiting the availability of some of those loans for a period of time. But I do think that's coming back up to speed. And I think it's such a great investment product that will return to normal. But there still may be some challenges in Baltimore that was kind of related to that. But, over 12 months, I think that we're just kind of unfortunately, we're a little bit held hostage to the mortgage rates and where the mortgage rates go. And so that's why I think, really focusing on affordability and focusing on those types of investments that are going to meet that are the most important thing. But hopefully interest rates will come down but we just have to see. It's very hard to predict. So I think the most important thing is to be cautious in deals. And I still think there's a disconnect between people that are selling investment properties and the wholesalers and the prices that people are expecting to get when they're selling their property to an investor versus, the reality of things taking a little bit longer to sell. It being a buyer's market, you have to really, make sure that you're delivering that top quality. I think that if you're delivering the top quality product at that price point, you will sell. There's no problem. I don't think we have any kind of massive oversupply or something like that. It is a buyer's market. So you really have to understand what you need to do in that neighborhood, what sells, whether it's that fireplace unit or the deck or whatever it's going to be, to really understand your market very well and understand that it is a buyer's market. And, just to be conservative. And if the numbers don't add up, move on to the next one. Don't get emotional. Don't get attached. Don't overpay. Don't have this fear of missing out, even though it's very frustrating. You go to an auction and 5 people overbid you. And I'm seeing that over and over, that investors are struggling to get good deals. But yet on the other side, there's a bit of disconnect because you have to factor in more time to finish your project and you get it sold.
Yeah, Jennifer, you got right at the heart and the core of what a lot of people have a keen interest in. And you mentioned it a few minutes ago, interest rates and affordability. So I want you to offer some advice for new investors, because here's where we are. A lot of my listeners are either scaling or leaving corporate America, right?
Mhm.
Just like I did. I did the same thing. So for
Mhm.
someone transitioning from corporate to full-time investing or even part-time, what should they know? Just out of the gates. What should they know?
Well, I guess it depends on your financial position. If you have capital and you can put that to work in terms of being able to fund some of your working capital in your project or to make the deposits that you need to purchase, then I think you can go, right into either the fix and flip or buy and hold, depending on what your objectives are. I think it's kind of nice to do a mix of strategies if you can, because you get a higher, you obviously through a couple of flips can get a nice sort of nest egg of funds to be able to invest. Whereas the buy and hold is a great strategy for passive income, for wealth building. It's very tax advantaged. So there can be sort of a multi, strategy there. And for those that are kind of coming into it, without all the capital, I would say there are certain strategies of wholesaling and getting involved in the market, trying to understand deals and deal flow and trying to come at it from that angle, which is not easy either. But that is a way to also come into the market without a whole lot of capital. Or I think what's really great is trying to partner up with somebody who is interested in investing in real estate, but doesn't necessarily want to put in the sweat equity or have the time to look for the deals and to get the deals done. Or a mentor, somebody who can, help you through the process. So I think it's very valuable to try to partner with people and, to find that source of capital or experience or whatever it may be that you're lacking. Because you're not, on day one, you're never going to have all of those things. So you have to kind of figure out what you can offer and what you can maybe get from someone else. And from a lending point of view, a lot of lenders do not want to lend full stop to brand new investors. I will, and I have, but of course I have to be careful. I have to make sure that person has a little bit more financial strength. And it would also be very important for me that they have a mentor, they have somebody that can work with them that's trusted to help them through the construction process and this kind of thing. So you learn a lot from those first couple of deals. Even people with experience, stuff comes out of nowhere that they're surprised by. So imagine on the first couple of deals, as you well know. So, it's really important. But there's a huge value in networking and local real estate clubs and meetups. And you can just find a wealth of information. And people, there's so many people out there that love mentoring other people, love working with other people. They're kind of deal junkies like myself. I love looking at new deals. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about any deal, even just to run through the numbers and kind of try to punch it up a little bit to see if the deal works.
That is fantastic. You are so succinct, and I really like how you crystallize that. So I'm going to have you drop a golden nugget here. And here's the golden nugget. And I'm sure people want to know this, just like all the other information you've shared. Jennifer, what is the best way for a new investor to build trust with a lender? Talk to me.
Well, yeah, I think that, again, showing that they are educating themselves, that they are considering and looking at a lot of different deals, that they're sort of organized and methodical about doing that they're, able to analyze the deal and understand that there are carry costs and financing costs and transaction costs, and that they're able to kind of put those numbers together, and showing that they're entrepreneurial and that they're willing to try to figure things out themselves. They're not just taking the ARV that their realtor says, yeah, the ARV on this is going to be 570 when it's really 475. They're pushing all the assumptions and they're trying to make sure and verify themselves, because this got to be careful in all of these things. So I think that, for me, it helps to give them credibility that they are coming at it from the right approach and that they're going to do everything that they can to repay me and do well on the deal.
Right. Fantastic. All right. So Jennifer, this has been absolutely fantastic. Very, very informative. We're coming into the top of the hour here. So if you don't mind, I want to hit you with a few rapid fire questions just to get a sense of what your experience has been like with a little spontaneity here. So let's talk about your biggest win. What's the biggest win you've had?
Biggest win? Well, I'm a lender, so I just want to get paid back.
So that's always when you get paid back, right? That's always.
I
hear you loud and clear on that.
For me, getting paid back, because I'm a deal junkie, I get a bit of every time I close a deal, like start a new loan, it's very exciting when you get through that underwriting and it actually happens. And then it's really exciting when that deal pays off and then your borrower's walked away with a check and you can basically hope that they're looking for their next deal to recycle it into. So for me, a win is getting repaid, and that's why I'm the lender. That's why I'm taking a secured position with an LTV that is conservative, because I just want to get paid back. I want my borrower to have a home run, to get 50,000 more than what they expected. So that is a huge win for me, is when my borrowers succeed and do really well, because then they're going to come back for another deal. So that's for me. But I'm not able to win in the sense of taking co-profits or something like that. I'm just the co-lender. But it's a huge win for me when my borrowers are doing well.
Yeah. Biggest lesson learned throughout this whole process journey of lending. Biggest lesson learned?
Yeah, it's definitely not a risk-free business. You have to be very careful with, I think, construction draws. That is a lesson to be learned. You don't want to learn that the hard way. When a project is first purchased, that's the riskiest point in time for the lender, because you're sitting on, something that if you need to sell that, you're already going to be, depending on what kind of deposit they put down, but you could potentially be underwater, because if you've got to sell that and it's nothing, no one has touched it, and you've got to have another wholesaler or something. So that's the riskiest point. As soon as your borrower starts working on the project, and that's why I emphasize speed and timing and delivery, they start adding value. And so that is a huge lesson to be learned, is to be careful to make sure that they get going on their project, not to overfund the draws too early, because money's fungible. And if somebody's working on multiple projects and you give them too much draw money and you're not paying attention to it, it's not necessarily their fault, but it goes into a pooled account, and then they're spending money to finish another project. So you want to be careful not to get too far ahead. That's definitely a lesson that could be learned the hard way if you're not paying attention. Loud
and clear. So what's the one thing you wish every lender would do or did before calling you? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I just think
borrower. I meant to say borrower.
No, for sure. If a borrower just wants to talk about a deal, the deal's not under contract yet, and they're going to maybe bid on it, and they just want to make sure, do they have a sort of a pre-approval kind of thing? I'm happy to, talk in general terms about anything. But if somebody's got a contract, and then they're going to already need to have this funded in a week or 2 weeks, they need to come with all of the information. They need to understand the neighborhood and the project. They need to have their scope of work and their budget, and we need to be able to talk hard numbers. So that's what I wish, that if they're coming to me and they need a hard answer and a hard commitment for a deal, that we have to start the underwriting right away, and that the process of getting through settlement, they need to come with everything that we need to know to agree on this.
It sounds like they,
if they're just coming to me to talk about a deal, which I'm fine with too, we can talk in general terms. You don't need to be that specific. But when it's a real deal that's under contract, then we have to get real serious real fast.
I think what I just heard you say, in other words, is they need to have done their due diligence to justify you supporting that financially, correct?
You said that perfectly.
Okay, fantastic.
Much
well,
better
Jennifer,
than
I will tell you this. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I will tell you, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers that will absorb this. This has been very, very informative. People reach out to me quite often, although I'm not a lender, asking me to direct them and point them towards people that do precisely what you do. So, Jennifer, this has been incredible. For anyone listening who wants to learn more about Blackline Lending or bring you a deal, how and where should they reach you?
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to meet anybody new, anybody who's a potential borrower, another lender out there who just wants to talk about the business, or maybe even someone who's thinking about getting into real estate and has some money to invest, but doesn't want to buy a property right now, but would want to invest in lending on a property. I'm happy to explore all of those options. My email is jennifer@blacklinelending.net. My website is www.blacklinelending.net. So you can look me up that way. I've got, LinkedIn or Facebook, some different things like that. But yeah, send me an email, and if you go to the website, you can find my phone number too. I won't probably say that right here, but somebody can find my phone number pretty easily if you want to text me. And I'm thrilled. I hope to hear from many of your listeners. And every time I do some sort of outreach or networking club or meetup group, I always just so much enjoy talking to different people in the business, and we always get great value from each other. So even just for networking purposes, even if you don't have a deal and you just want to talk about market stuff, yeah, please reach out. I would love to do it.
Jennifer, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on Rip and Flip. And to everyone listening, if you're serious about flipping, this is an episode that you'll definitely want to replay. Jennifer, I ask all of my guests to do this. Any parting words that you'd like to leave for my listening audience?
Well, everybody just should keep at it, keep moving forward. We can't control all the noise in the markets and things happening around us, but just keep looking for good deals and know that market cycles play out. And if you found a good deal, you're going to be fine no matter what the deal is. So no matter what the market is. So just be persistent, keep at it, and hopefully I will be hearing from you soon. Thank you, Al.
There you have it, folks. Doesn't get much better than Jennifer Billings. Jennifer, we'll have to have you back. And thank you so much, okay?
Thank you. Be a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll see you.